Despite early success with the W14 and a maiden podium result of the season, Mercedes insists that considerable upgrades are still required for its Formula One car. And these upgrades are supposed to be the B-spec Mercedes W14, which will introduce a complete redesign of the now known Zero side pods. Will this upgrade be enough to make Mercedes title challengers again? Let's dive in. Lewis Hamilton's second-place finish in the Australian Grand Prix concluded an overall more competitive weekend for Mercedes, which began the season on the back foot and virtually wrote off their car design after qualifying at the first race. Mercedes team head Toto Wolff stated at the time that adhering to the idea that had begun slowly and improved last year didn't work out, and that we will, within the group, embark on new paths. Therefore, when Mercedes defeated Aston Martin for the first time in 2023 in Melbourne, and Hamilton beat Fernando Alonso to finish second, it raised some concerns about whether the Mercedes W14 was as bad as it was made out to be, and if the team should remain with this vehicle design after all. Mercedes is not going to be taken in that easily. Its increased performance in Melbourne was neither the consequence of a major upgrade or a miraculous alteration to the current vehicle that suddenly unlocked considerable speed, despite the idea that it was run in a favourable setup window. There will be some discussions about this at Mercedes, but rumours suggest that they will indeed move on with the B-spec car for the remainder of the season. George Russell said that Mercedes discovered that the car performs somewhat better in reality when run differently than simulations predict, which also suggests that there are still particular deficiencies in Mercedes' virtual development tools to rectify. I've been working really hard with my engineers to get the most out of the setup, and I feel like the last 2 weekends we've really put the car in a really great window and migrated away from where our simulations have been telling us, said Russell. That is perhaps a reason why our pace was poor in Bahrain. With the knowledge I have now, I think we probably could have had the car in a very different window in Bahrain to have more performance. So we need to look and understand why the sims are telling us one thing that we're doing in a slightly different direction from. Mercedes still believes that the car is more on the edge than the Red Bull and Aston Martin, and therefore more edgy to drive. So the days it is in a better window will make a major impact. There were, however, additional Melbourne-specific elements. Mercedes seemed to have a solid understanding of the tyre warm-up requirements of last weekend, which is usually a focus at Albert Park. And this, along with some Friday practice delays due to weather, seems to have pushed Mercedes closer to the limit of what the W14 has to give, while others, including their direct rivals and maybe Red Bull, were taken off guard. As a consequence, Mercedes was the second fastest team in qualifying, with the season's smallest gap to the front, a feat that Hamilton described as really blew us all away. Yet one excellent performance in Australia, namely in somewhat cool circumstances when tyre warm-up was important, does not alter the reality that the Mercedes is ultimately not fast enough, because it was still a distant second behind Red Bull. Russell had the lead early on after passing Max Verstappen, but was forced out of contention after pitting during a safety car period that turned into an untimely red light, and finally withdrew due to a rare Mercedes engine failure. When asked whether Mercedes had been too fast to criticise their vehicle idea in Bahrain in retrospect, Russell said, "No, it's definitely still necessary. The game that we are seeing in the tunnel at the moment are going to bring some decent performance, and the fact is we're here to win. We're not here just to be the best of the rest or to be half a second behind Red Bull. Our fight's with Red Bull. We may have been quicker than Ferrari and Aston Martin this weekend, but we're still clearly a long way off where we want to be." Verstappen fought back from a terrible opening lap that put him behind both Mercedes to win his second race of the season in Melbourne. Even though Russell was pulled out of the way for him, Verstappen was still behind Hamilton at the first restart. Yet, in Hamilton's words, Verstappen came sailing by with ease in the latest demonstration of the mind-boggling straight-line speed advantage, and Verstappen then frequently lapped much quicker than his opponents whenever he needed to establish a lead. That validated the post-qualifying discussion, in which Russell emphasised the need for upgrades, and Hamilton stressed that only when the car is right can Mercedes consider fighting for wins, and only reinforces the impression that sticking with its chosen car concept would mean a hugely ineffective amount of flip-flopping. "We made a good step forward this weekend on single lap and on race pace," was Wolff's verdict. "Is this where our baseline needs to be? I'm not sure. We maximised what we have. It was good to see that we were racing Ferrari and Aston Martin. We just need to consolidate that. And the more we learn about the car and bring the upgrade packages, hopefully we can challenge the leaders more." Lewis Hamilton believes Mercedes can narrow the gap on Red Bull soon, after finishing second in the Australian Grand Prix, with a car he's still unsure about. The upgraded Mercedes W14, which is expected to arrive at Imola, will be the turning point for Mercedes' season. Until then, they'll have to maximise their points to minimise the deficit to Aston Martin and Red Bull. Despite the fact that Verstappen quickly passed in with DRS, Hamilton fed off Fernando Alonso for second place, and feels it's a major result for Mercedes, considering how much input his vehicle provides him. I still feel uncomfortable in the car though. I don't feel connected to it, Hamilton said. So I'm driving as best I can with that disconnect, and I'm working as hard as I can to try and create that connection. But I think it's a long project. But still, considering we've been down on performance, we're clearly down on end of straight pace compared to Red Bull. For us to be fighting with Aston, it's just amazing at this point of the season. We've just got to keep on fighting. A big thank you to all the people back at the factory. Let's keep pushing. We can close that gap. It's going to be tough, but not impossible. It's really unlucky for George today. We've got to look into it on our side because our reliability has generally been really good, so that's really unfortunate. But otherwise, to get those points is really amazing today. I definitely didn't expect to be second, so I'm super grateful for it. Hamilton informed Mercedes over team radio that he didn't think he could complete the race on worn tyres at the same pace as Alonso. But he did, and the 7-time world champion is loving having so many great drivers at the front end this season. I definitely wasn't bluffing. Honestly, I was having to push a lot right at the beginning to keep Max behind, and then Fernando was pushing. They're very, very quick. I think ultimately, he was a little bit quicker today behind me, but I just managed to hold him off, so for that I'm really grateful. And also, just what a legend. We've got a world champion up ahead. We've got 3 world champions in the top 3. That's pretty mega. Although everyone is expecting Mercedes to step up quickly, they are taking their time this season. For now, Wolff has already ruled out a quick delivery of the new components, stating that any permanent alterations to the W14 would not be made until Imola, round 6, which takes place on May 19th to 21st. This is to make sure that the new concept will indeed be the best option for the team. The Austrian told Sky Sports, "We're doing good steps, good developments, but you've got to run them, confirm them, produce them. So I think we're not looking for introduction before Imola. We want to do it right also." Although the early prognosis for the impact of the renovations was favourable, he warned that observers should not anticipate a miracle from this first stage. "That's going in a good direction," said Wolff, "but we shouldn't expect like a miracle. Suddenly we're on pole by half a second. I think it's more like consolidating our place between Ferrari, Aston Martin and us. That would be a good step." Wolff said that the team would not be adding any performance for the next races, but would instead try to optimise vehicle setup. This means they'll have 2 races left to perform with a car that seems to have its own will at times. It'll be interesting to see the dynamic between the drivers and the B-spec car once it arrives at Imola. Do you think the new car will make a huge difference? Will this bring Mercedes back to the top again? Or will they still have some catching up to do? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And let us know what you think about the teammate battle between Lewis and George. For now, George has a 3-0 record in qualifying. Will he beat his teammate again this year? Or will we see a redemption story unfold for Lewis this season? 3 races down and 20 to go, so there's plenty to play for this season. And we'll be here to uncover it all for you, so subscribe to stay updated. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.